I have been putting this video off for a very long time, and I feel like now's the time that I need to do it. Partly because it's ADHD Awareness Month and it seems like a good sort of time to do it. But it's funny because a lot of the reasons why I've been putting off making this video are the same reasons why I need to make the video in the first place, and that is because ADHD is so misunderstood and so, well, yeah, just misunderstood that I feel like awareness needs to be raised, but I don't know if I want to be the person to raise that. I know that in order to raise awareness and to improve the understanding of society, I need to be a part of the conversation and talk about my experiences being diagnosed with ADHD, so here goes, I guess. So I was diagnosed with ADHD last December. I was, and still am, 24 when I was diagnosed with ADHD, so I wasn't diagnosed as a kid. I mean, I'll just start off with the basics with what ADHD actually is. So ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. I can't remember the code. And it's basically a neurological condition that, it's not a very well named neurological condition because, for two main reasons. One, because you don't necessarily need to have hyperactivity in order to have it, and I'll get onto that later. And it's attention deficit is a bit of a tricky one because it's like you can pay attention, it's just you tend to be paying attention to the wrong things, really. A better way for me, I think, to describe it is that ADHD affects the executive functions in the brain. So that's things like your working memory, your emotional regulation, your self-motivation, your problem solving, is those sort of aspects of your brain. And I think part of the reason why it's so misunderstood is because, like, from time to time, I think anyone can have problems with, like, memory or problem solving, or there's difficulties people have, like you haven't slept very well, or if you're having a bad sort of emotional time, or like you're going through a hard time or something. There's difficulties, I think, with the executive functions, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's so misunderstood, is that oftentimes, like, when I do talk to people about ADHD, I'm just met with like, oh, everyone's a little bit ADHD, or ADHD isn't real because those things impact everyone. And it's, I think the easiest way to describe it is that ADHD, in terms of like the ADHD brain and the neurotypical brain, which has, let's say, lapses in in executive functions sometimes, it's ADHD affects you more frequently for longer durations of time, you know, more intensely, and the off sort of, oh, I forgot my, you know, key one day, isn't the same thing as having a neurological disorder. In order to be diagnosed with ADHD, you need to meet at least 6 of the potential 18 symptoms, and there needs to be evidence that it's negatively impacted your life in multiple areas of your life for basically your entire life. Like, you can't develop ADHD as an adult, like there has to be evidence of it since when you're a kid. And so when you go through the diagnosis process where you are being diagnosed as an adult, you have to basically provide evidence from your childhood to basically show that you've suffered it for a long time. Because if it's like, basically, if you suddenly developed problems with like your executive functions since adulthood, then it can't be explained by an ADHD diagnosis because it has to be from childhood or from birth. So before I get into my diagnosis process, I'll just also explain, there are 3 different types of ADHD. There's predominantly hyperactive, predominantly inattentive, and then combined type, which is the type that I have. And when I was diagnosed and assessed with ADHD, I was diagnosed to have 17 out of the 18 symptoms, so pretty glaring. Let me change this up. It's making me nervous. Gosh. So I think I might start with, actually, I'll start backwards. I'll go from the doctor's appointment and then sort of backtrack. I think that might be the easiest way to do it. So it was in lockdown. I was in first year of uni. was having a great time. For all sorts of reasons, but it's funny because I feel like in first year of uni I didn't really get along with my flatmates a lot, so I spent a lot of time just by myself, because like no societies or anything was on, because this was like in the pandemic. All my university lectures and everything were online and on Teams and all that kind of stuff, so it wasn't, the only really people I could interact with was my flat, and we didn't really get along. We were just different people, I guess. So I spent a lot of time just by myself and I find that when you're spending a lot of time by yourself, you have a lot of time to just think, I guess. And I think I was having a lot of difficulties with living, like with my flat, I guess. And I was things like with my ADHD personally, I find that for me the most difficult part is the emotional regulation. Like I just can't deal with my emotions. I'm happy to admit that. And yeah, I think I'll start there because I've always had kind of emotional problems. I've had like big emotional outbursts. I can't sort of like regulate or deal with my emotions, which I don't know back then was emotional dysregulation. But in the past, I've been to the doctor just about my emotional parts of like my emotional problems, I guess. And I've had all different types of therapy. I've had CBT, I've had group therapy, I've had therapy in person, I've had therapy over the phone, I've had therapy in Suffolk. I started therapy when I was 13 at Cairns in Suffolk. I've had therapy in Lincolnshire when I moved there. I've had therapy in Staffordshire when I moved here. And basically, so from the ages of like, I was 23 in first year, so the ages of 13 and 23, so over that 10-year period I'd had all sorts of different all sorts of different types of therapy, you know, over the years, long term, short term, all the things. And I remember like I say, when in lockdown, I feel like I spent a lot of time myself, a lot of time just like think. And I basically was like, I realised that I've been having like 10 years worth of therapy and I felt like I was still in the same position. And I was still having the same kind of emotional problems. I was having all sorts of different problems, and I think I sat down one day in my room and I just wrote down a whole list of things that I found it difficult, and I was conscious to basically write everything. The thing is, I think the best way I think I can describe it is that I was having all sorts of problems with the school I've been in. I've been working, I've been volunteering, I've been started uni when I was 18. Is that when you start uni? In Falmouth. And so I had a lot of different experiences, like in Cornwall, in Lincolnshire and Staffordshire, in Suffolk, in school and in work, and I've realised that I was struggling with a lot of things that no one else I interacted with seemed to be struggling with. And so I basically sat down one day in lockdown and I just wrote down, I think, like just a list of all the things that I found that were difficult for me, that didn't seem to be difficult for other people, and as well I also wrote down things that like other people made comments about that I did, which I came to the realization, oh, well, people keep making comments about that, so it's obviously not like a thing like that I should be doing or thinking or feeling or whatever. So I basically wrote down, I got rid of the list actually after my assessment, but I ended up writing like 3 pages worth of symptoms, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to ring the doctor, and this time I'm going to talk about all this thing, the whole picture, instead of just the emotional stuff, because like I say, even though the emotional problems are the ones that I struggle with and find the most difficult, they're not the only problems that I had that other people didn't have. So I was like, if I just go and I talk to the doctor about everything, I might actually get better help, because obviously if I've had different types of therapy and I'm still in the same position, then whatever has been, the help that's provided me hasn't been working. And I felt like, part of me felt like this because I wasn't telling the full story. So I basically, like I said, I wrote down everything and I rang the doctor and I just read out the whole list of symptoms that I was struggling with. she told me I was talking too quickly, she didn't know what I was saying, but so I read out this whole list to the doctor, which I kind of wish I still had now so I can read it out, but saying I wrote down a list of things doesn't really help. So it was like the emotional problems, for example, when I was are very clumsy, things like that, or I can't even remember what I wrote, it's not helpful. Basically I wrote down a list of things of like emotional things, physical things, mental things, all the things that basically I found hard, or other people were like, why are you doing this? In very mean ways sometimes. So after I read this list to the doctor, I remember she said, are you going to be okay with me telling you what I think you might have? And I think when someone phrases anything like that, you're immediately like, oh my god, no, I don't want to know. But at that point, like I say, I'd been in and out of therapy for 10 years, I'd been struggling all my life, and I was like, I feel like I need to know. And I even said to the doctor at the time, like, I'm not looking for a label or like a diagnosis or anything, I'm just looking for like solutions so I can better deal with life. So yeah, so I said, I feel like I need to know. So I then said, so when she said, you know, are you going to be okay with what I had? I said, no, I don't think I'm going to be okay, but I feel like I need to know. So she said to me, it sounds like you are textbook ADHD. But a doctor can't formally diagnose you with ADHD, you have to be referred to a psychiatrist. She told me she was going to refer to me to Psychiatry-UK, but she also told me to find an official ADHD self-assessment form by like a psychiatry thing, not just like a buzz. She was like, make sure it's not just like BuzzFeed quiz, but like an actual like form. Fill out that form, send it to a secure email, and then we'll send that off to Psychiatry-UK for them to assess you. So then, I need to get some coffee. So then, Psychiatry-UK got into contact with me, and they sent 3 forms to fill out. So one of them was a different self-assessment form. One of them was a form to be filled out by someone else who knew you, like since childhood, but like wasn't you basically. And the other one was about like heart health. Or like family history information, like family health history information, specifically about like heart health. So I filled out those forms, and this is like to fill out those forms I needed to provide information from my childhood. So I basically used my school reports to provide that information, but oh man, I'm gonna cry. It was quite hard for me. It was quite hard for me to like reread my school reports and go through that process. I actually cried for 2 hours after I read my school reports, because it's difficult because when you read my school reports, you can see that all the signs and the symptoms of ADHD were like glaringly there, and it was like, you know, all sorts of like, Leisha doesn't concentrate and this, that and the other, and like Leisha has all these like emotional problems and friendship problems, and you know, she's not very organised and stuff like that. But like, so all the symptoms of ADHD were like basically just, you know, I wouldn't even be surprised if I just got my school teacher just copy pasted the DSM I put in my school report. But all the symptoms of ADHD were like there, and the bit that I struggled with was like, you have like the general comments at the end of like basically the teacher's opinion of you, and all these reports were saying how I was like a bad kid and how like my behaviour was inappropriate and this, that and the other, and it was just generally just like not very nice comments. And that part was difficult for me because I wasn't a bad kid, I was just neurodivergent. And so it was hard to have to provide that information, but I guess, you know. So part of the information was to you have to fill out these forms that talk about like your childhood, your life now, or like why it's difficult, this and the other, and then you send off those forms, and then they then arrange to have like a video call assessment with me. So the wait period for that was about 6 months. So from the first doctor's call to the psychiatrist call, that was about a 6-month wait period. It was quite difficult to. It was very difficult those 6 months in terms of like waiting for the assessment, because one thing is like the doctor's like, oh yeah, you have ADHD, and like it's glaring like your textbook, but I hadn't officially been diagnosed. And then another part of me was like hoping that it wasn't the case, and that would turn around like, oh no, it's fine, it's fine, don't worry about it. It's a mistake, but like, and so it was very frustrating for me to have to wait that time. So when I had the psychiatrist appointment, it was like a video call thing, and then you have to basically tell your entire life story all over again. That's that's the thing with the ADHD sort of assessment process, is that you just basically have to tell people your whole life like multiple times over. It gets really exhausting, which is probably why I waited a year or almost a year to like tell the story again, I guess. So you talk about like your childhood, your work now, what difficulties you have, this and the other, and then they basically assess you, and then but if I backtrack a bit and talk about, so I've basically talked about school there. So obviously like I had struggles with like work and with the university as well. So yeah, in terms of school, obviously I had like my school reports and like the problems I was having in lessons. I think obviously like with my school reports and everything, it's like showing the difficulties I had in like lessons. I don't really remember school like lessons all that much. I mean, I guess I was disruptive, but like I just what I remember from school is that everyone always used, like all these kids and all the other kids would call me like loopy Lydia, or they'd call me crazy, or I guess that was the hyperactive part of it. But I was constantly being sent outside the head teacher's office, which is what I mean. Like I wasn't a bad kid, but I was treated as such. Like I was just neurodivergent, and I was misunderstood. And I don't want to say like sound like I'm making excuses for myself, but it was difficult in school because like I think it's hard because like I don't know about nowadays, but definitely when I was in school, like teachers aren't educated or well knowledged. Brilliant. I don't have a lot of knowledge as far as I'm aware on like neurodivergent conditions, and they don't know a lot about them. I don't know if that is, well, it's probably not even, part of me is like it's not their role or not part of their thing, like job description, I guess, to like deal with they're not psychiatrists or psychologists or anything like that. They're just school teachers teaching kids, but like at the same time as my childhood and my school time really, I think a lot of the experiences I went through fundamentally affected my self-esteem today, and like how I approach situations and how I deal with life and how I deal with people today. And I know that it really impacted my self-esteem, and it still does, which is sad in a way, but like life I guess. So like even with like I struggled a lot with friendships in school, and I was having big emotional reactions to things, and I was having friendship problems, and I was being loopy and crazy, and people didn't really want to hang out with me because I was I guess I was too much for them, and so I did have a difficult time in school, and that didn't really sort of change after I left school. Like work was hard. I remember I worked in a warehouse. I had a warehouse job for about 10 months, and I was constantly getting comments from people then, like saying I was described as like the Duracell bunny. I was always like on the go, doing things quickly, and people were always making comments about me being clumsy and bumping into things, and like, oh, why are you acting like this, and why are you doing this? I had a lot of, I don't want to be all like, woe is me, but I did have a lot of just horrible comments from people all the time, and it really affected my self-esteem. And I think fundamentally it's because of a lack of understanding of any kind of neurodivergent conditions, or just people being different to the norm. I did struggle a lot, especially in that one job I had. Like, I was constantly receiving like disciplinary. I received disciplinary. One day I was upset, and I didn't want to tell the duty manager why I was upset, and I literally got disciplinary for being upset, despite the fact that I was like doing my job properly. So I know it wasn't like a good work environment for me, but like I was constantly being like reprimanded and like just for like being clumsy or forgetful, or not dealing with time very well, or like being disorganized or not playing very well. It's like, I guess difficult because it's difficult for people if you're basically surrounded by someone who has undiagnosed or unmedicated ADHD. I appreciate that it's difficult for people, but at the same time it was like I didn't need the comments, and it was difficult for me, and I felt like no one was helping me or trying to support me. It was just, I was always constantly being villainized, like in school, in work, and yeah, that negatively impacted me a lot. So I don't want to cry, but like I know that the experiences I had, because like I didn't know that I had ADHD, like negatively impacted like how I worked, how I thought, how I behaved. Like even now, like my like self-esteem and my view of myself has been impacted by that. So I don't want to cry. So it's just, I don't know, it's hard, I guess. It's what I mean, I can't do all my movements. To be fair, this is such a big deal for me. But yeah, it's like it's difficult because I don't want to sit and be like, oh, that was so hard, because like I know I've been in a very privileged position. Like I grew up with a good education, I had a good family unit, and I did have friends. Even though I had friendship struggles, I have had friends, and I have had good experiences. But I can't deny that it was like hard. So I think this is not how I want this video to go. So yeah, basically. I'll talk about something else now. Yeah, I don't know, because I remember I had a conversation with I rang my sister, it might have been about the same sort of time. I think it was in between the time of the doctor's appointment and the psychiatrist. I remember I rang my sister and I was saying that like, I just feel like my whole life like I've been so misunderstood. And like, I don't want to be like, oh, no one gets me, and I don't want to be like that, but like, the reality is that I have been, and I am misunderstood because my brain works differently to the norm. And I know that now I think I do have, like, my family are really supportive, my boyfriend's really supportive, and I know that I have a good support system around me, but yeah, I just felt really misunderstood. And I think a lot of it was because I didn't really understand myself, why I felt different, or why things were difficult or struggles, or I was having struggles that other people weren't having. I myself didn't understand, and I didn't know that I had ADHD, I guess, until I was diagnosed with it. And I remember after the psychiatrist appointment, I looked up the DSM-5, because you're not actually told what the symptoms are, you're just told you have this many symptoms. So I looked up the DSM-5 and I was like, oh, okay. And I think after then I was like, okay, I can now start to deal with the fact that I have ADHD. But yeah, I don't know, I always felt misunderstood, and it was hard, and I didn't really want to admit, or be like, oh, it's hard because it's like, I don't know, I feel like, because I'm happy, I think I grew up in a very privileged position, and I think when you have a lot of privilege, it's difficult to turn around when like, actually life is hard for me, because like, you're met with like, other people have so, you know, it's like other people have it so much worse, but then of course, other people have it so much better, so I guess, I think a lot of that was difficult because I was misunderstood, but also I misunderstood myself. So, part of my assessment with, I feel like this video is really jumpy, I'm sorry for that, I have ADHD. So after like the talking through the symptoms and everything with the psychiatrist, and he was like, yeah, you have ADHD, he gave me like, I guess, a list of like resources to look at and some books to read to basically help me have a better understanding of, because obviously I didn't know really what ADHD was, and I didn't, obviously if I knew what it was I probably would have been diagnosed sooner and gone to the doctor sooner. But so these books sort of, what were these books? I'll get them all, so have a look at my Goodreads because I can't even remember what they were called. And so the doctor gave me a list of these books to read, which I bought them like as soon as or at least not long after the assessment, but it took me, I put off reading them for at least sort of half a year. They were, sorry, I'm just looking at my Goodreads. So the first one was the Adult ADHD Toolkit by J.R. Ramsey and A.L. Rostein. In fact, I'll put them up on screen if I know how to do that. The second one was Taking Charge of Adult ADHD by Russell Barkley, and then the other one was Delivered from Distraction by Edward Hallowell and John Ratey. After I was diagnosed, I was still very much in denial. Like, even though I looked up ADHD on the DSM-5 and I was like, okay, this is the most relatable thing I've ever read. I was still very much sort of in denial, and I didn't really want to address it for a long time. So I did sort of put off the books until, so I was diagnosed in December, last December, and I read the books just last summer. So I guess that was like 6 months. Yeah, like 7-8 months. And I might do a different video on those, like reviewing those books actually, but the third one, Delivered from Distraction, was the best one that I read, and it's the one that I gave to my boyfriend to read so that he had a better understanding of who he was in a relationship with.